what I'm going to share is a story of paleontology rescue in the digital age. But I want to give you some background first about why I'm here. I study marine mammals, and I've actually eschewed too many Shamu-type slides because even though they're iconic animals, what I want to emphasize is that they have land ancestors. And that's true about all marine mammals. They all have independent ancestors that lived on land many millions of years ago. And there's a great evolutionary story there. As a paleontologist, that's what I'm really interested in, is how evolution works. The early evolution of whales in particular is well understood now after about 30 years of paleontological work in all parts of the world. We understand this early evolution of whales where they made this key land-to-sea transition. This happened between about 55 million years ago and about 37 million years ago. But we know whales in today's food webs are very important consumers. They're actually predators whose influence outstrips their abundance. That's another way of saying that they're kind of top dog in food webs, and their impacts are both important and not entirely well understood. But how they've undergone this dramatic ecological change from trophic obscurity, being on land, to being dominant predators in food webs, that's the scope of my research program. That 30 plus million year history is what I'm really interested in knowing about. At the Smithsonian in particular, we have this great legacy of studying marine mammals, both living examples and their fossil ancestors. This is in the Sant Ocean Hall. You can go see one of the most spectacular examples of ancient whales here, Basilosaurus. Not a dinosaur, actually an early whale. One of the first fossils discovered in North America over 150 years ago. But studying fossil whales and other fossil marine mammals is not all about dry bones. In fact, that's my job as a paleontologist, is to breathe life back into the bones. And it's kind of like being a biologist through deep time. Deep time is geologic time, time so vastly immense that we really can't wrap our minds around it. And so here's a photo of me holding a scrap of bone in the Atacama Desert. It turns out that scrap of bone is actually a little bit of rib from a fossil dolphin. Now, what makes this appropriate here to kind of frame a lot of what I want to share is that this is preserving ecologic interactions in geologic time. That rib bone is scraped up with tooth marks from an ancient shark. So what's being preserved here is actually a scavenging event, ecological interactions over deep time. That's really the goal of paleontology as we do it today. Plate tectonics drives a lot of my research program in South America, and this is a fantastic place to work because ancient seafloor is uplifted by the action of the Nazca Plate subducting under the South American plate. This is how the Andes were formed. And what it does is it raises what was once seafloor into the dry, arid desert. This is a terrific place for paleontologists to work because there's no vegetation. Southeast United States, not so great, a lot of kudzu. Atacama Desert, fantastic. No vegetation, you can see rocks everywhere. And the other reason South America is especially important, if you're interested in marine mammals, is it's an evolutionary laboratory over geologic time. There are evolutionary experiments for which we have no descendants. On the top here we have Thalassocnos, an aquatic sloth. So there wasn't just one species or two species. There were 5 different species of aquatic sloths that evolved in South America over the last 11 to 5 million years. There's also a dolphin named Odobenecetops. Don't worry, it's not a quiz. I won't ask you to repeat that. It's a dolphin that evolved a walrus-like face. What's interesting about that? There are no walruses in the southern hemisphere. So here's an ecologic mimic that evolved in South America. A lot's going on there, and we don't understand very well what's really the reason why, or for their origin, or for their extinction. So that's what drew me to South America. And this is what it looks like when you're out there in the field. We start on the coast and work our way inland, and this is where I trade my biologist hat for my geologist hat, and we're reading the sequence of rocks to understand environments through time. As you go through rock strata, that's preserving sediments that preserve different environments through time. And this is mainly a lot of walking around, taking notes, taking photos, talking a lot with your colleagues. And that's the fundamental basis for understanding anything about the sequence of fossils through time. This is great. This is that moment of discovery. My Chilean student, Carolina Goodstein, who actually just got her PhD, this is literally 30 seconds after she discovered the ear bone of a fossil dolphin, split in half. She can put those two pieces together. I love her smile here. She later excavated that skeleton with her students. You can kind of see here what the Atacama looks like. Just great exposures of rock, no vegetation. It's, again, fantastic for a paleontologist. And besides discovery, the other big reward about doing paleontology, especially internationally, I think is my colleagues would attest, it's that interpersonal interaction is working with foreign colleagues across languages, across institutions. Our work in the Atacama combines different national museums from different countries, different universities, students from different universities and faculty, and even local museums. And so this is where the story picks up here. This man on the right, his name is Mario Suarez. He's Chilean, and he calls himself Tuareg. He wants you to know that he's a desert rat. Tuareg, like the African nomads of the desert. He wears only one color at a time. Here he's wearing only orange. Now I think he wears only blue. But he kept on telling me about this fossil site that was in tremendous jeopardy. He's a man he's quite a character, and he's prone to a little bit of embellishment. So we were working very hard initially down there in our first few field seasons, and I kind of didn't believe him. And I just said, we'll get to it, we're doing some other stuff. And then finally, towards the end of our field season in 2011, we actually went to this site, this whale site by the highway. And this is what we saw. And we rolled up and we saw whale skeleton after whale skeleton. Here's one complete skeleton coming out of the frame. Every other black tarp going off into the distance here, that's another whale skeleton, and it's complete. And this is actually just looking at the north end of the site. There's over 40 skeletons. In my business, I don't wish a whale skeleton on anyone. They're fantastic and tremendous when they're mounted in a museum. Excavating them, getting them back into a museum, that's an ordeal. And I don't wish one on anyone, certainly not over 40. So this site was actually uncovered right next to the Pan American Highway. This was exposed because of geopolitics. Chile is becoming a geopolitical force in South America. They have mineral resources, especially in the Atacama, that many other countries would like. So they're expanding the Pan American Highway. In doing so, they uncovered this giant site. Because patrimony laws are very strongly enforced in Chile, we had the opportunity to come in here and collect this data. The bones were saved, but what's important is you want to know the context of the bones. What is their arrangement? What kind of rocks are they preserved in? A lot of important scientific clues to answer the ultimate question, why? So this was a little overwhelming. I didn't know what quite to do. And we were at the end of our field campaign in 2011, what I thought was our last field campaign. And I was just kind of turning that coin over in my mind. And then I realized that part of the answer to this problem, what to do about this, because we were losing data by the day. We had one more month to do anything with this site before everything was removed. Part of the answer is actually here at this institution. At that time, there was an incipient program through the Digitization Program Office to deploy 3D digitization, digital tools that capture 3D information about objects, about the environment. There are two guys who are now known as the Laser Cowboys, and they're actually right outside, right here. Maybe you saw them during the break. They were my answer. And so 2 weeks later, we were back. And actually, it wasn't as easy as that. We had to do a lot of travel arrangements and planning. This was largely improvised because nobody had done this before. And what they did is they brought a lot of basically every digital tool they had, from a high-resolution laser scanner, a long-range laser scanner, and we were even recording time-lapse footage that we uploaded live to the web. That's something I'm really proud of, is that we kind of described this in real time as best we could because we had a Wi-Fi hub that was sponsored by National Geographic. But again, this is all improvised because nobody had ever had to do this kind of thing, especially under the time constraints we had. By the time we got back to the Atacama Desert, we had 1 week. And very quickly, Adam and Vince, the two Laser Cowboys, were deploying their gear, taking time-lapse videos. Time-lapse videos were especially important because we wanted to know what we were doing and record it for our own benefit in the future, not just for public dissemination, which is important. We want to know what we were doing because we were working night and day. Now, what's important is we didn't always get along in trying to figure out how to do this. There was a lot of discussion. Sometimes it got pretty heated. They're all fueled by coffee and empanadas, and I was mainly the food guy for much of this. But we worked it out, and I'm very proud of the results that we achieved. This is just a nice shot of Vince scanning at night. These guys didn't sleep. The Laser Cowboys were tremendous out in the field. You can see the traffic nearby of the Pan American Highway passing next to what's an incredible arrangement of fossil whale skeletons. So the other dynamic that was really challenging about this kind of excavation is that we were a bunch of scientists hanging out by the side of the Pan American Highway with a lot of really expensive-looking gear. And that drew a lot of attention. You can see what traffic looks like, and this is why they're expanding the highway. This drew a lot of national media attention. And when you're a scientist doing something really interesting and exciting, the last thing you want is a camera crew hovering right over your shoulder. And so this was a balance that we had to strike, and how to kind of do something that we hadn't really done before while fielding television interviews. That was a remarkable challenge, and I'm really thankful that I had my team there to help me. This is Vince coming towards the end of the high-resolution laser scanner. This is a tool that's better used inside a machine shop or a laboratory. I don't think the company really wanted us to bring it out into the Atacama Desert. We did it anyway. We had to improvise a 300-pound base here for it to be calibrated appropriately. The other reason there was some other gear that was really important to bring. This laptop, a high-end laptop that we had a generator running 24/7. We wanted to know if the data that we were collecting was accurate, precise, that it was what we wanted, because you only have one shot to do this. And again, it's a tribute to the laser cowboys that they knew what they were doing and deployed all these digital tools. This high-resolution laser scanner is taking micron-scale data, and so it looks something like this. This is 30 feet of whale, and this is the skull, the jaws, the skeleton. It's complete, nose to tip. And this is a digital model, so we've created kind of a digital avatar, and for the first time, the bottleneck is not the data in, it's the data out. We have micron-scale data of this skeleton. This is dissertations worth of data in the future. The problem is kind of manipulating and dealing with it. There's really no tools digitally, software-wise, hardware-wise, for us to handle this right now. The nice thing about digital data, you can paint it, make it look more like a fossil digitally. And then, of course, you can also print it. And so this is part of a magazine article that was featured in The Economist earlier this year. This is me holding a prototype of that same skeleton printed at about 1/8 scale. And so what we're going to do via some fantastic industry partners that work with the Laser Cowboys, we're going to print this full scale, and we're going to hang it in the new Learning Center at the National Museum of Natural History's Curious. It's a whole kind of new way of thinking about public outreach and engaging what we do with the museum with the broader public. And what's fascinating about this is through 3D printing. I suspect we'll hear more about this. And actually, the great thing about this is you can miniaturize a whale and put it in your pocket. So this is we're talking about future is now. This does look kind of, this is not a gimmick, and the reason I think it's not a gimmick is because this is fusing three things that we do at our museum really well, but in a novel way, and that's research, collections, and outreach all at the same time. So this is actually the product of scientific research, because there's very important scientific data in my hand, scaled down. We have scale bars and a color chart here. This is also a collection, because the data, the actual bones have been saved. I'll show you in a second where they are. But they're mostly inaccessible. And when they're miniaturized and put in your hand or on a computer screen, they're tangible and you can interact with them. You can collect information, and they can be stored long term. So that is a collection, and it's outreach. You can put this in anybody's hand and immediately understand, wow, that's pretty cool. You show them the scale bar, tell them it's a fossil whale skeleton. So 3D printing has its place, and I think we will just see more incredible applications of that in the future. So what happened here at Cerro Baena? What can I say? I can't tell you much because you're going to have to wait for the scientific publication. What I can tell you about this amazing site is there are not just whales preserved there. We have a lot of other species of vertebrates, and that's all I can tell you at the moment, scientifically. But in terms of the collection, this is where it's stored now, in a 19th century train station at the edge of one of the local towns in one actually occupying most of that train station. Here are what these field jackets look like, large plaster jackets encasing the sediment and the bones themselves. This is work that's going to take decades to do, even under the best circumstances, even if you had, say, Smithsonian's National Museum of Natural History leveraging whatever resources. This is the kind of thing, this is what occupies the day job of many paleontologists. But with digital data, we can extract the information, and we did in the field, about these skeletons and what they mean scientifically and what they tell us about evolution over the grand scale of geologic time right now. And so there's data sets that are kind of set forth in the future, and we hope to eventually then scan the rest of the skeletons that are here. And we didn't get a chance to scan every skeleton. There's actually the majority of the fossils were not scanned by our efforts. So I'll just leave you with one last thought, and this is this is really interesting to me. The Smithsonian has been involved in research in Chile for over 100 years, and it's not all paleontological. Smithsonian had some of the first astronomical observatories in the southern hemisphere in the Atacama Desert of Chile. And over here is a beautiful nighttime shot of ALMA, the Atacama Large Millimeter Array. Chile has now become kind of a focal point of international astronomical research. Astronomy and paleontology are very much kindred natural science disciplines, and that's because they're both dealing with this idea of deep time. Astronomy is looking into the vastness of space, looking backwards in time. Light years, right? We're looking backwards in time. The farther back we look in space. That's true of paleontology too. Every time you hold a fossil in your hand, that's a messenger from deep time. There's another aspect that's equally compelling too. It's teamwork, and it's the democratization. Any one day, somebody could make a discovery that changes the textbooks, either for astronomy or paleontology. We saw that with Shoemaker-Levy, the comet that crashed into Jupiter. That was discovered by an amateur. And the same is true about paleontology. And I think the role of digital tools like 3D digitization is that empowers people and democratizes and actually helps people understand what scientists do in a much more powerful way. Thank you.